Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Compelling Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Ramerini, the founder and chief visionary officer of Compel CEOs. And today we're pleased to have with us Joanna Brandi. She's in this week speaking to our groups. Joanna is a customer experience expert. She's also a speaker and a consultant who's dedicated to transforming customer service into exquisite customer care. For over 25 years, she has helped companies create positive, strength-based workplaces that drive customer loyalty and employee motivation. As president of the Joanna Brandi Company, she delivers customer loyalty, positive leadership, and happiness to the companies that she touches. She's coached and consulted CEOs and their teams nationwide. She is a sought-after speaker, and she energizes her audiences during her workshops and keynotes that inspires passion for customers and boosts workplace positivity. So, Joanna, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Steve, for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now you're speaking to us this week. I know you have a couple of different presentations, but this week you're focusing on the 5 pillars of well-being, 5 pillars of flourishing. And basically, from what I understand, these are all built around the acronym PERMA. Pleasure, engagement, relationship, meaning, and accomplishment. Tell us how you came up with that and what it means.
Okay, great. Actually, I didn't come up with it. My teacher, Dr. Martin Seligman, came up with it in the book called Flourishing. Martin Seligman is the founding father of positive psychology, and I studied with him over 20 years ago to become an authentic happiness coach, and it opened my eyes to a world I'd never seen before. But while Marty was putting forth his new theory of authentic happiness, he said it was about pleasure, engagement, and meaning. Well, subsequent to that, after he had certified about 200 coaches, he did a master's program, and some of the people in the master's program said, Marty, I think you left out a few things. So that's where the PERMA, pleasure, engagement, relationship, meaning, and accomplishment came in. And he talks about that in his book, Flourishing. And since I'm one of his students, and I'm also a chief happiness officer, I believe that organizations and individuals should look at those 5 elements if they want their lives and their businesses to flourish.
So, can you walk us through a little bit on each one of those?
Absolutely. The first one is pleasure or positive emotion. The body needs positive emotion because the body needs the chemicals that the body produces when you're enjoying positive emotion. So for instance, when you're happy, when you're having a good time, when you are engaged in a great conversation, when you are in that mood that you would probably say is a good mood, a good happy, your body is producing chemicals that turn on your parasympathetic nervous system. So your body is producing more dopamine, is producing more oxytocin, which is known as the tend and befriend chemical. It's producing more serotonin, which is the rest and digest chemical, and it's producing endorphins, which we need to get a boost of energy. So your body actually changes the chemicals based on the emotions that it's feeling.
Okay. And then next comes engagement.
Engagement, yeah. Engagement is being fully passionate in what you're doing, fully engaged in your work, having a great time doing what you're doing, and not noticing the passage of time. So when you're in that state of engagement, your whole body goes into a state known as flow. And you know exactly what I'm talking about because we all go into it, but we're not conscious of it until we're almost out of it. That's the work state that you get into, or the play state that you get into, where you forget that it's lunchtime. You know, you just want to keep going. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm intrigued because to me, I've heard a lot recently about how culture is about communications, and all of this PERMA to me seems like it's related very deeply into culture, and especially engagement and relationship. How can you have either one without communication?
Oh, absolutely. Communication is key. Communication is key. I think what a lot of people forget, though, is that we communicate with our bodies, with our body language, not only just with our words, but we're communicating in many, many ways. We're also communicating with the electromagnetic energy that surrounds our bodies. And I'm sure you know if you've been in a situation with other people, they come in and they're forcing a smile on their face, but you can feel that prickly energy. That's the electromagnetic field around their body responding to the emotion that they're truly feeling.
So speak a little bit more about relationship in the context of what we're talking about here, the 5 pillars.
Well, human beings, we're relationship creatures. We don't exist well without one another. In fact, right now there's a crisis in this country. It's called a loneliness crisis because we're not enough with other people. People are meant to be, we used to sit around the fire, right? People are meant to be in groups. The body evolved by being with other people. So relationships are absolutely critical to mental health. Relationships are absolutely critical to peak performance. Relationships are absolutely critical because once again, when you are in relationship with someone, the chemicals in the body change. They give you the chemicals that make you strong and that build your immune system.
You know, it's interesting. I have concerns that the younger generations that are coming into the workforce don't spend enough time developing personal relationships. They have relationships. They have social relationships from online. They have online relationships. They have almost virtual relationships. And now, in addition to all of that and the social media, you have AI, which is our virtual assistant, let's say. So how do we foster more of this engagement and relationship development for the millennials, for the Gen Zs, and all the generations that are going to follow after them?
Well, I think first of all, they have to understand the benefit. They really have to understand the benefit of real relationships, not relationships online, not relationships at a distance, but people sitting in the same space talking to one another. And sometimes I think we're going to come to the point where we have to have a basket at the front of the room where everybody drops their phones and where there's a specific period of time where people aren't allowed to handle technology. They're only able to interact with one another. Like you and I are making eye contact. And you'll notice when two people make eye contact and they're in relationship, our bodies move the same way. So you and I are in rapport. Now, rapport is magical. Rapport is what makes us human. And you'll see it even with babies. But people can't learn rapport while the other person is at the other end of a device. And these are key relationship elements that have always been with us as human beings, and they're not going to go away. And I think some of the depression we're learning about, some of the loneliness that we're hearing about is coming from the fact that people aren't hanging out with each other. They're hanging out virtually. They're not because there's a dance of bodies. If you look at people that are in conversation together, there's a dance of relationship, and you're dancing with no one when it's one dimensional.
You had mentioned it earlier in a conversation we were having about how we are experiencing a loneliness crisis in this country.
Loneliness crisis for sure. The Surgeon General is very, very concerned about that.
And it stems from
not being with other people, simply from not being enough with other people. You know, your family and my family 2 generations back probably lived on the same block somewhere, right? With 3 generations in the same house. You had all kinds of people around you. You had all kinds of teachers around you and all kinds of influences. Now that has narrowed. And I believe the human system needs that because we don't even know for sure how deep communication works. We know it comes from making eye contact and things like that. But there's so much more. There's so much more. And people who are in deep communication with one another, I'm a practitioner and a trainer of neurolinguistics. When people are in deep rapport with one another, they can practically read each other's minds.
Interesting. Well, that certainly is no testimonial for working from home or virtual
No,
jobs.
no, I know, and I'm a real advocate for the blended. A few days a week in the office, a few days a week at home. I do think, especially the introverts, work better when they're alone. They don't have to make small talk. I think that women very often comment that they feel safer since they've been working at home because they don't have to take the petty, honey, would you get me a cup of coffee kind of things that still go on. Um, but I think there's a nice blend that you can have of working alone and getting into your own rhythm, and then putting the phones aside, going into the office, and actually being with the team, not doing Teams online.
It's interesting. Honey, get me a cup of coffee. I don't think that would fly in New York.
Well,
It might fly in the
but
Midwest.
it's still happening, though. Oddly enough, it's still happening to some degree. Yeah.
Anyway, well, moving on. The last two components of PERMA, meaning and accomplishment.
One of the key parts of happiness is having a connection with something something that's larger than yourself. Whether that's religion or family or team, something that's bigger than you, something that has meaning. The idea, there's an old story I used to tell about bricklayers. You can lay the brick one on top of the other. You can lay the brick and say, well, I'm helping to build a cathedral. But if you really have meaning, you throw your arms up into the air and say, I'm building a cathedral to the glory of God. Because there's a connection with what you're doing when you're laying the brick to build the wall that will become part of a cathedral.
It's that old story,
It's the old story.
Adage of the politicians walking around NASA, and they asked the janitor who's mopping the floor, and what are you doing? And he says, I'm sending a man to the moon. I'm helping send a man to the moon. You do have to have that connection.
Absolutely.
Because if it's just like a job by rote, anybody, any bot, any
bot. Good idea.
can
Any bot.
do that job.
That's right. Right.
It's interesting when we're now talking about bots, and there are so many, repetitive, labor-intensive jobs that can be done and are being done by bots. So, and I guess this all results in achievement, accomplishment, success.
Of course.
And we all want to feel some level of success.
Absolutely.
It's like a basic human need, I would imagine.
I think it is to go a level higher, to work a little bit, I don't want to say harder, but to work a little bit more towards a goal. And when you're working towards that goal with other people on a team, it's magnificent when you get there. So that we are evolving creatures all the time, and accomplishment is part of that. If you did the same thing every day, you didn't do anything different, and you didn't get any better, your system you'd get depressed. Because the system needs that.
So I'm sure this message, excuse me, is going to be well received by the 25 to 45-year-old audience. And that seems to be who our audience currently is at
That's
Compel
nice.
CEOs.
Yeah.
That's where we get the majority of our visitors to our website. But the majority of our members are 50, 55 plus currently.
Yes.
They're the business owners. So business owners, there's still plenty that are older than 50. How do we get this message across to some of the older, more seasoned business owners?
I know, because it can sound fluffy, and I've been challenged because I've worked with CEOs for a long time. So I've been challenged before. I get this message across by using science, by using statistics that come out of the latest scientific studies on what makes people perform well, what makes people productive. We know without a shadow of a doubt that when people are happier at work, they're 14% more productive. So I think to get into a business owner's heart or pocketbook or whatever you're looking to get in there, I have always found that taking the science out and saying, here, take a look at this. When you appreciate someone 5 times more than when you find what they're doing wrong and try to correct them, you're going to get better performance. So the good news is that the science of happiness, which has been around now it's also known as the science of positive psychology, been around now for more than 20 years. We now have master's programs in it. We are well stocked with the science to prove that this works. Because I come across CEOs all the time that they say, this is just fluffy. I've even come across CEOs that say, if I appreciate them too much, they'll want a raise.
Well, it sounds like the scientific connection there, though, is that if they performed at a 14% higher level, would that justify a raise?
Oh, I didn't think of it that way. Yeah, there you go.
I mean, if
There you go.
Another way of looking at it is like, well, we want 110%
Oh,
from
yeah,
all
you
of our
remember
people.
that? Yeah.
Well, if you keep them happy, they'll perform at 114%.
They absolutely will.
That's very interesting. I'm glad you're using science, because I could really see where the skeptical business owner, CEO might say, what, I got to pay them and make them happy too?
Right.
And scientifically, yes. If you want better performance, the answer is yes. And I'm glad you do use that, because it answers the question, why should we keep them happy? Why is happiness so important? Tell us a little bit more about, how did you get started with neurolinguistics?
Actually, after I quit my job and decided to start my own company, I thought there was something I thought there was stuff I needed to understand that I didn't understand. I felt my perspective was too narrow. Mm-hmm. So at the time I was living in New York, and I went down to Philadelphia once a month to study neurolinguistics, to understand neurolinguistics is about how you communicate with yourself and how you communicate with others. It's an absolutely fascinating science, and it uses a lot of questions, and that formed the basis of some of the things I walked into my business with. I also went and studied with two people and this is going back a long time, I studied the art of empowerment, because the word empowerment was just starting to show up in the workplace when I started my business. So I studied the art of empowerment as well. So I knew that the old-fashioned top-down way of, I'm the boss, do it my way because I know it works, I knew that wasn't going to last. So I wanted to make sure that I had the skills necessary to teach, you might say, the next generation of leadership. And I'd say since I started, we're on a next generation of leadership that has the scientific proof that when we are well, when we are happy, when we're feeling good, we bring more to our work. And I teach something called the positive spillover effect. And I've charted this out, and we'll talk about it in some of your groups. I've charted this out. When you create a more positive culture, it expands out. So you have a happier culture, you have happier employees. Happier employees make for happier families. Happier families make for happier neighborhoods. And I've actually got a whole way of charting this out on a future map, because when you put the effort in to create a more positive culture, it spills over. For instance, one of the things that, I guess it's the communication scientists, I'm not sure which scientists proved this, but when you have a positive experience with someone, that person is likely to go out and create 2 more positive experiences for other people.
And it just multiplies from there.
And it's a spillover. You can call it the ripple effect, the spillover effect, but it multiplies and multiplies and multiplies, because the state of positivity in the human body is so healthy and so useful to human survival that it just keeps multiplying.
That's interesting, because when I first started doing this work about 25 years ago, I was told and exposed to the theory that the way to influence the greatest number of people would be to influence business owners.
Absolutely.
Because they impact all of their employees, and their employees have nuclear families, extended families, extended communities. And so if you really wanted to have an impact, on society, the best way to do it was to, attract and work with business owners. And so that's what I've been doing.
And you are
with
so right
25
about
years.
that,
Yeah.
because it's an exponential effect.
So tell us a little bit about, how did you get so interested in this? I know you said you had a job that was in advertising,
Direct marketing, yeah.
direct marketing. So,
And advertising.
so advertisers have been bombarding us with things and sending us subliminal messages for years.
Yes, they have.
What led you to, besides quitting your job, but what led you to go down this road instead of continuing on in marketing, let's say?
And marketing is fascinating. I did enjoy it. You know what led me to do that? And you'll laugh because you're from Long Island. And
Well, now everybody knows.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
But I used to be a Long Islander as well. I'll tell you the difference. I used to live 15 minutes away from the office, and I would come home like a maniac every day because I didn't have enough time to wind down. And then I moved. I bought a house in Glen Cove, and it was a 45-minute drive. And I was so tired at the end of the day that I used to nod off on the drive. So I started buying courses. I probably still own them somewhere. Tony Robbins and neurolinguistics and neuro this and the neuropsychology of this and that. And I literally created a rolling university. And I got fascinated. Absolutely fascinated. I was a single parent, so I wasn't going to go back and get another degree or any of that kind of stuff. But my car became a rolling university. And then when I had a book contract, and when I wrote my first book, which was on customer service, winning at customer retention, 101 ways to keep them happy, you keep them loyal, and keep them coming back, I really started getting deeply into what impacts the relationships at work. And honestly, I'm just a perennial student.
Lifelong learner.
Oh my God!
It's a very important, as I've gotten older, I've come to embrace this, to be a lifelong learner at some level.
Oh, absolutely.
So you can, as we used to say, be green and growing instead of, dying on the vine, so to speak. It's interesting. I also did something similar with books on tapes. I would go through 3, 4, 5 business books a week on just listening, because I'd be driving around, whether I was driving to work or from work or going on customer calls, etc. And that led me to the Tony Robbins course as well.
Ah, there you go, Tony.
And it was interesting. I think I must have listened to that 3 times, but because after the first time I listened to it, I changed the way I was going about conducting my own way of working. Right. And I got an immediate promotion and advancement.
Oh,
and
how interesting.
I was like, well, this stuff really works. And so, like almost anything else, it works if you apply it the way that's best for you. And that's what I did. So that's great. I'm very much a proponent of, continuing to educate yourself and learn. It doesn't have to be from reading books. It could be listening. It could be actively participating. Because
absolutely.
There are, and I don't know, maybe I haven't kept up with this, but you can either learn by reading, learn by viewing, or learn by doing.
Right.
And I tend to be more of the viewing and doing rather than, okay, let me read this and chart this out. Anyway, a little bit too much about me.
I listen. I live in Florida now, so I listen when I walk on the beach. I have audio books that I'll...
Very nice.
In my whole lifetime, I don't think I'll ever be able to finish the amount of audiobooks I have. But I love doing that. And what's funny is I have discovered that from neurolinguistics that I'm very kinesthetic. So I can when I hear something the second time, I can tell you where I was physically when I heard it the first time. So the movement of my body helps me absorb the material.
Right. It's interesting how we remember where we were at certain pivotal times in our lives or certain pivotal events. I'm sure we're fairly contemporary in our age and, going way back. Some people won't even know what we're talking about, but I'm sure you could remember where you were when President Kennedy was assassinated, just like
Yeah, yeah. I
almost
sure do.
everybody,
Yeah.
everybody can
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
where they were on the morning of
9/11.
9/11, 2001. So it's pretty interesting. So getting back to, though, what you're here to talk to us about this week, any like easy tips to get the ball rolling, so to speak, with our business clients, business owner clients?
Well, I think what's important is to understand is that you can use PERMA in your life and you can use PERMA at business. And, you'll see the shift tomorrow when we start talking about it first on the personal level, and then we shift it right over into business. I think the important thing to really understand, since we are in an engagement crisis, according to Gallup, people are not engaged in their work, is how we engage others, how we interest others, and how we get them to show up as the best that they can be. So it's our ability to see others at their best and then appreciate it out loud, or appreciate it with a note, and appreciate it when you appreciate something, but you not to just say, good job, Johnny, it's not just about the good job. It's about, when I see you at your best, here's what I see. It's the ability to understand people's strengths. And when you put on, we're going to do an exercise tomorrow, which you will see how you can listen. I encourage everybody to put on a new set of ears, how you can learn to listen for someone's strengths so that you can use the feedback that you learn, the information that you learn there, to give them feedback about using their strengths in service of your organization.
I could see where that would increase productivity and efficiency and success.
It does. And people that don't get the opportunity to use their strengths at work, they're miserable. And they're 6 times less productive because you're not using them. And I know that from years and years and years of, I've been inside hundreds of companies and interviewed thousands of employees. So I hear what they say about, I'm so good at this, but they never let me do that. They have me doing this, but I don't like doing that. So it's really about, is the employee a match for the work? Not necessarily the job, but a match for the work. Do people get a chance to work in their strength zones when they are at work?
Right.
And that's a leadership issue.
We've had several speakers
On strengths.
in the past who've talked about making your product or service, your company, really indispensable, irresistible. And so in that orbit of those conversations, it invariably says, comes up, well then, I don't know what the statistic is now, but a couple of years ago it was something like 33 to 40% of all your employees are posting on Indeed. Doesn't mean they're not happy, but possibly you haven't made your company or their job as irresistible as you need to make it for them to be happy and productive. And the other point you just touched on, I've tried to hone in on with the members, also comes from a speaker we've had in the past that talks about knowing the capabilities of your workers and giving them jobs that enable them to use those to get their greatest success. So it kind of sounds like we're all on the same wavelength here.
We're on the same wavelength, and I think the way you do that is important, because I was certainly encouraged when I was employed. I was certainly encouraged to do more and do more and do more and do more. But I lived in a constant state of anxiety. So here's how I teach it now. Everybody's got a comfort zone, and we're comfortable in our comfort zone. It's a leader's job to help someone stretch the size of their comfort zones. So get out of the comfort zone into the stretch zone, and here's the caveat, without ever putting them in a panic zone. I spent years in the panic zone. I spent years on anxiety medication because everything I did was so far out of what I could do without encouragement, without appreciation, without any of that stuff. I just came from, good Italian stock, so I knew you just have to keep going and keep going and keep going.
Yes.
But the reality is, the younger people today are feeling tremendous anxiety. Tremendous anxiety. So including what I teach on positive leadership, and there's one of the courses I'm still doing around customers, I'm teaching people techniques that they can do to reduce some of the anxiety in their body, to bring themselves down. I just finished a 1.5 year long project, and God, I hope it goes on forever. There are still pieces of it that's going on with a big call center in Atlanta. And the results were so magnificent because the results weren't just work-related. People are now taking better care of themselves. They're not driving so hard. They're getting great results at work, but they're doing 55-minute meetings instead of 60-minute meetings. And in that extra 5 minutes, they're getting a glass of water, they're going to the restroom. But this was a hard driving company that felt you had to keep up those stats. And we've accomplished something amazing by helping people understand how they can feel better about themselves. And almost everybody I've talked to there said that they brought that home to their family and they deal differently. One young woman wrote me a letter recently. Her name was Maria. And she said, I want to tell you what I learned here because my family is doing so much better. Okay, what is it? She said, I realized that from the moment I got up in the morning, I thought about work. And I was plotting my day and what I had to do. And of course I got my kids ready. Of course I gave them breakfast and all that. But I wasn't present with my children or my family before I came to work. So my work started long before I came to work. She said, I don't do that anymore. Now I'm completely present with my family until I get in the car. And then I let my work day start mentally when I get in the car. She said it has made a huge difference in her relationships at home.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've experienced that myself at times. So in closing, is there a quick starter tip?
Oh my goodness. A quick starter tip.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think one of the things every leader especially needs to have to do is get really good at looking for things to appreciate. So I actually give assignments. I call them appreciation audits. So several times during the day, and I like habit stacking. So let's say when you pick up your water bottle and you go to get yourself your drink of water, stop for a moment and think of 3 things that you appreciate. Write them down and go on with your day. Next time you go to your water bottle, do the same thing over and over and over. And what you will do is you will train your mind to look for more things to appreciate, which you can then share with your employees. Because most people say, well, what do you want me to say to them? They're doing a good job, Johnny. It's way beyond that. It's way beyond that. It's learning as a leader to find things to really deeply appreciate and then sharing that with your employees. And when you do that at home, it helps with all your relationships at home. And when you do it with your friends, it helps with all your relationships. So it's a tuning of your own brain to put yourself on alert for all the things you could possibly be appreciating. Because in the state of appreciation, your body gives you those cool chemicals. And your brain, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, open up. It's called the broaden and build response. So you can see more, you become smarter, and you're able to find solutions you didn't have before.
It's very interesting. And I can definitely see the connection. Well, thank you very much for that. This has been very educational, very informative. And I'm sure our business owners who are going to experience this live, as well as those who may be listening to this, are going to find all of this useful, and hopefully those who are listening to us and not members of Compel, you'll apply some of it and enjoy the benefits of what Joanna espouses and teaches every day. So Joanna, thank you very much again.
You're very welcome.
Looking forward to the rest of the week with you.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And hopefully we'll talk again.
We will.
All right. Take care.